The sun hung low in the sky, painting the city in orange and gold as cars rushed across the highway leading to the outskirts of Atlanta. Among them was a sleek silver luxury car, the kind of vehicle that made heads turn wherever it went. Inside sat Jade Monroe, one of the youngest and most powerful female CEOs in the country. At just 33, she had built an empire in clean energy technology from the ground up. With a sharp mind, a sharper tongue, and heels that clicked with authority, Jade wasn't just respected, she was feared, adored, and envied all at once. But today, she wasn't on a red carpet or in a high-rise boardroom. She was behind the wheel of her prized car, wearing casual jeans and aviator sunglasses, driving herself out to a retreat her company had sponsored for its top-tier employees. Jade didn't trust anyone else with her car. She didn't like chauffeurs or security. She believed in power, but also in control. That's why it shocked her when the car jerked violently and slowed down, the dashboard lighting up like a Christmas tree. "No, no, no," she muttered, frowning. She pulled to the side of the road, stepped out, and opened the hood. Steam hissed up into her face. "Of course," she said flatly. "Just great." There was no signal, no working GPS, and it was the kind of road that most city folks avoided. Tall trees lined the highway, and the silence was deep, uncomfortable. She tapped her phone, tried to call her assistant, but nothing went through. That's when she noticed a small service station across the road, an old, dusty auto shop that looked like it belonged in a different decade. The sign read, "Joe's Repairs, honest work for honest pay." Jade hesitated. She didn't trust places like that. She didn't trust people like that. Her life was filled with experts and professionals who wore badges and suits, not grease-covered jumpsuits and Saint-Ouen, Ilto boots. But the sun was dipping lower, and she had no other option. She crossed the road carefully, heels clicking against the gravel, and pushed open the glass door of the shop. The bell jingled. Inside, it smelled like engine oil and old leather. Tools hung neatly on the walls, and the sound of soft jazz hummed from a dusty radio in the corner. A man stood behind the counter, wiping his hands with a cloth. He was tall, well-built with dark brown skin, gray in his short beard, and wise, warm eyes. His jumpsuit said, "Marcus," in faded letters. "Evening, ma'am," he said with a calm smile. "What can I help you with?" Jade paused, looked him over, then pointed back at her car. "My engine broke down. The car won't move. I need someone to fix it." Marcus nodded. "I can take a look. Want to show me what it's doing?" They walked outside and he popped the hood again. Jade folded her arms and watched him work. He didn't rush, didn't brag, didn't seem to care who she was. He just focused on the engine, eyes scanning, fingers moving. After a few minutes, he leaned back. "Looks like your fuel pump's clogged. Might be some damage to the injectors too. It's fixable, but not quick. I'll need overnight at least." Jade groaned. "I don't have overnight. I have a major event to reach by sunrise." He looked at her calmly. "Well, I could try something temporary, but it's risky. You could break down again within 20 miles. She was getting impatient, tapping her foot. "You don't understand. I'm Jade Monroe, CEO of Greenreach. I can't be late." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "I fix engines, not egos." For a moment, there was dead silence. Then Jade laughed. It surprised even her. She wasn't used to people speaking to her like that, and she certainly wasn't used to laughing in a moment like this. With a smirk, she folded her arms. "All right, Marcus, if you can fix this. Engine tonight, I'll give you something big." He raised an eyebrow, amused. "Like what?" She grinned and said teasingly, "If you fix it tonight, I'll marry you." It was meant as a joke, a throwaway challenge she thought he'd laugh off, but Marcus didn't laugh. Instead, he wiped his hands again, looked her dead in the eye, and said calmly, "All right then, Ms. Monroe, let's see what your engine and fate has in store." That's when Jade realized something strange about this man. He wasn't intimidated by her wealth, her fame, or her power. He was solid, steady, grounded, and for some reason, that shook her more than any corporate rival ever had. Inside the shop, Marcus began gathering tools and old parts he'd collected over the years. Jade sat in the small waiting area, watching him through the glass. She noticed things she never paid attention to before. How careful he was, how he double-checked every step, how he hummed along to the jazz as he worked. She watched the sweat drip from his brow as he leaned over the engine, the way his hands moved like they'd been born to fix things, to solve problems. Not with computers or code, but with intuition and care. It wasn't long before she stopped scrolling her phone, stopped complaining, and just sat quietly. As hours passed, the night grew deeper. Marcus finally came in with grease on his hands and said, "It's not perfect, but it'll get you where you need to go. Just don't race." Jade blinked. "You really did it?" He nodded. "I always do what I say I'll do." She stood, unsure what to say, part of her still amused by her earlier joke. "Well, I guess I owe you a ring now." Marcus smiled. "No, you don't. But I do hope you remember tonight, not for the car, but for the way people still help each other. Not for money, not for names, but because it's the right thing to do." She looked at him, suddenly feeling something she hadn't in years, humility, and maybe a bit of awe. She reached into her purse, pulled out her black business card, and handed it to him. "This is my direct line. If you ever need anything at all, call me." Marcus took it gently. "I never need much, ma'am, but thank you." As she drove away, the engine purring quietly under the hood, Jade glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Marcus walking back into his shop, and something inside her shifted. It wasn't love. Not yet, but it was something real. And Jade Monroe didn't believe in coincidences. She believed in destiny, and for the first time in years, she felt it tugging at her heart like a wire pulled tight. The CEO's return to the repair shop. It had been 3 weeks since the night Jade Monroe's luxury car broke down in the middle of nowhere. 3 weeks since she had made a joke about marriage to a stranger who didn't laugh but fixed her car anyway. 3 weeks, and Jade still hadn't stopped thinking about Marcus. That man had left something behind in her mind, something she couldn't explain. He didn't ask for money or favors or recognition. In a world where people climbed over each other for power, he just helped and walked away like it was nothing. But to Jade, it wasn't nothing. Not at all. Back in her glass office at Greenreach headquarters, the world spun around her. Her assistants rushed in and out with charts and graphs. Emails flooded her screen. Investors asked for meetings and reporters requested interviews. Yet somehow, between billion-dollar deals and press briefings, she found herself staring out the window, thinking about the quiet jazz, the smell of grease and oil, and a man with kind eyes and strong hands who treated her not like a queen, but like a person. One morning, while sipping her black coffee and scrolling her calendar, her eyes landed on an open weekend slot. Her next few days were packed tight. But that Saturday, there was nothing scheduled. She tapped her desk thoughtfully, then leaned over to her assistant. "Cancel my photos. Hoot and the brunch meeting." Her assistant blinked. "Ma'am, that was with the mayor's committee." "Cancel it," Jade repeated softly. "Tell them I had something more important." The assistant hesitated, then nodded and walked out. Jade turned back to the window, smiled slightly, and whispered, "Let's see if you meant it, Marcus." Saturday came, and Jade dressed not in power suits or designer heels, but in a soft cotton blouse and old jeans. She pulled her hair into a ponytail, left the makeup behind, and drove herself. No bodyguards, no staff. She wasn't going as the CEO of Greenreach. She was going as Jade. And when she pulled up to Joe's Repairs once again, it felt oddly peaceful. The little bell above the door jingled, and Marcus looked up from behind the counter. He was sipping a cup of tea and reading a car manual. When he saw her, his lips curled into a surprised smile. "Well, well," he said, standing up. "Didn't expect to see you back here. Engine trouble again?" Jade laughed softly. "No, not this time. The car's perfect, actually." "Then what brings you to my little corner of the world?" She stepped inside fully, the sunlight casting a soft glow behind her. "Maybe I came to see if that marriage offer still stands." Marcus blinked, chuckled low, and leaned on the counter. "I thought you were joking." "I was," she admitted, "but I wasn't joking about being impressed." Marcus waved her in and gestured to an old metal stool near his workbench. "Sit down, Jade Monroe. Let's talk like people instead of titles." She smiled and sat. "Deal." For hours they talked, not about business or engines, but about life. Marcus told her about his past, how he had once studied mechanical engineering but dropped out to take care of his sick mother, how he had turned his childhood love of machines into a small business, refusing to grow big because he didn't want to lose his peace. Jade shared pieces of her own journey, things she rarely told anyone. how she grew up poor in Detroit, how her mother worked 3 jobs to put her through how she built Greenreach from a borrowed garage with a $10,000 grant and a stubborn dream. Their stories were different, but the fire in their hearts was the same. By the time the sun began to set, Jade looked around the shop with a kind of warmth she hadn't felt in years. "This place feels real," she said quietly. Marcus nodded. "That's the point. There's power in quiet places." Jade looked at him, and for a long moment neither of them spoke. Then she asked softly, "You're not scared of me, are you?" He raised an eyebrow. "Should I be?" "No," she said, "but most people are. They see the title, the press, the money, and they get nervous." Marcus shrugged. "I see a woman who lost her way to peace, and I'm not scared of lost people. I'm scared of those who don't even know they're lost." Those words hit her like a soft thunder. It wasn't an insult. It was truth. And deep down, she knew he was right. She had everything the world said should make her happy. Yet something had been missing for a long, long time, and now she was starting to believe that what she was missing might not be a thing, it might be a person. Before leaving, she stood at the doorway and turned back to Marcus. "I want to learn," she said. "Learn what?" "How to do what you do, fix engines." Marcus blinked. "You, Miss Boardroom? You want to get grease under those perfect nails?" She smirked. "That's right, teach me." He studied her for a moment, then smiled. "All right then, your first lesson starts next Saturday. Be here by 9. Don't be late. I charge double for late students." Jade laughed as she walked out. "Then I better bring donuts." The following weeks were something Jade never expected. Therapy by tools, healing through bolts and wires. Every Saturday she returned, hair tied up, hands ready, heart open. Marcus taught her how to change oil, check belts, replace spark plugs. And he made her do it herself, never let her just watch. And every time she messed up, he simply showed her again, never mocking, never impatient. At first, she struggled, her fingers fumbled, her back ached, her legs cramped, but she kept showing up, and each time Marcus saw a little more shine in her eyes, a little less tension in her shoulders. Something inside Jade was waking up. A version of herself that wasn't in magazines or on Forbes lists, a version that smiled without reason, laughed without cameras, breathed without pressure. One afternoon, while wiping her hands after fixing a rusty old pickup truck, Jade sat on the shop floor, legs crossed, grease on her cheek. She looked up at Marcus, who was adjusting the brakes on another car. "You know," she said, "all my life, people told me that success means always moving forward, never stopping, never looking back." Marcus looked over his shoulder. "And what do you think now?" She smiled slowly. "I think success is knowing when to stop and fix what's broken, especially inside yourself." Marcus nodded slowly. "That's a lesson most rich folks never learn." She leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "Then maybe I'm finally getting rich in a different way." But the world outside didn't stop. Greenreach's board of directors began asking questions. Why was their CEO suddenly unavailable on Saturdays? Why was she missing elite events, turning down high-profile interviews? Rumors started to swirl. Some said she was sick, others said she was hiding a relationship. One day, her assistant came to her office looking uneasy. "Ma'am, there's a journalist who's been asking around. They think you're dating someone outside the circle." Jade looked up calmly. "Let them think what they want." "But your image." "I said let them," Jade repeated, this time more firmly. She wasn't ashamed. Not of Marcus, not of herself. For once, she was living her life, not the life her brand dictated, but she knew the world wouldn't let her be free forever. Something was coming. A moment that would force her to choose between the woman she had become in the shop and the one she had built in the spotlight. Scandal in the headlines, strength in the heart. The first photograph appeared on a gossip blog at 6:03 a.m. It was blurry, taken through the windshield of a dusty car parked across the road, but it showed enough. Jade Monroe, billionaire CEO of Greenreach, sitting on the floor of a mechanic's shop with dirty jeans, a ponytail, and a smear of engine grease across her cheek, laughing with a man in a blue jumpsuit. By 7 o'clock a.m., 5 more news outlets had picked up the story. Some questioned if the woman in the image was really Jade. Others confirmed it within minutes. By 8:30 a.m., it was trending on every social platform in the country. CEO, in coveralls, has Jade and the mechanic, Grease Queen. At first the posts were playful, then skeptical, then sharp. Is Jade Monroe dating a mechanic? Did she lose her mind? Is this a publicity stunt or a breakdown? Billionaire beauty trades the boardroom for brake fluid? When Jade walked into her office that Monday morning, the tension was already thick. Her assistant met her at the elevator, holding a tablet full of news clippings and notifications. "Ma'am," she said nervously, "it's everywhere." Jade took the tablet, scanned the headlines, and closed it calmly. "I know," she said, walking past the staff who tried to pretend they weren't staring. Inside her corner office, the board members were already waiting. They stood up when she entered, faces tight with concern. "Jade," said Howard Linton, the CFO and longest-serving director, "what's going on?" She sat down at the head of the table, crossed her legs, and looked at each of them in turn. "You've all seen the pictures," she said, "so ask me what you really want to know." There was a silence, then one of the younger members cleared his throat. "Are you romantically involved with this man?" Jade raised an eyebrow. "Would that be a problem if I were?" "It could damage the brand," said Howard. "You're the face of Green Reach. People expect class, influence, elite status, not back-alley garage love stories." Jade stood up slowly, walked to the window, and looked out at the city skyline. "Let me ask you something," she said without turning. "When I took Green Reach from a startup in a garage to a $12 billion company, did I do it with a man on my arm?" "No," someone mumbled. "When I launched the solar grid tech that changed the market, did I need public approval for who I dated?" "No," came another reply. She turned around, eyes blazing. "Then why now?" The room fell silent. She took a deep breath. "I spent years chasing perfection, chasing the image the world expected. I became the woman people feared, not the woman they respected. This man, this mechanic, he didn't care who I was. He treated me like a human, and for the first time in years, I felt human." Howard shifted uncomfortably. "It's not about your feelings, it's about shareholders." "It's always about shareholders," Jade said sharply, "but this time it's about something bigger. It's about honesty, humility, and the truth that success means nothing without soul." Another member asked carefully, "Do you intend to keep seeing him?" Jade's reply was firm and clear, "Yes." The media storm didn't fade. If anything, it grew louder. Talk shows debated whether her actions were empowering or reckless. Commentators speculated on Marcus's background. Some tried to paint him as a gold digger. Others accused Jade of staging it all for PR. Paparazzi started showing up near Joe's repairs, trying to catch more pictures. Marcus refused interviews, refused money, refused everything. He just kept working, head down, hands greasy, smile calm. But it was getting harder. One day, Jade arrived at the shop with a brown paper bag of lunch, only to find Marcus on the phone arguing with someone. When he hung up, she asked, "Everything okay?" He nodded slowly. "Someone broke into my house last night, left a message on my wall. Stay away from the Queen." Jade's blood ran cold. "What?" "I'm fine," Marcus said. "But this world of yours, it doesn't like people like me stepping into the light." Jade clenched her fists. "They're scared of what they don't understand." He nodded. "And power hates humility because it can't control it." She took his hand the first time she had done so in public and said softly, "I won't let them ruin this, I swear." That night, she released a public statement on her personal page, the first she'd written entirely by herself in years. To the world watching, "Yes, I'm seeing someone. Yes, he's a mechanic. Yes, I, Jade Monroe, a billionaire CEO, am in love with a man who smells like engine oil and wears steel-toe boots. If that shocks you, good. It means you're awake. I spent years living in a glass tower, surrounded by expectations and masks. Marcus reminded me that kindness is powerful, and humility is not weakness. I won't apologize for finding happiness in a place you didn't expect. And if my truth makes you uncomfortable, perhaps it's time to question what kind of comfort you value, Jade." The post exploded across the internet. Some praised her bravery, others mocked her vulnerability. But what mattered was that she had finally spoken from the heart, not a press script. And slowly the noise began to shift. Young women began posting their own stories, tagging #RealLove, #GreaseQueen, and #PowerWithPurpose. Mechanics, janitors, and working-class folks across the country shared how they had always felt invisible, until now, and Jade began to see it. This wasn't just a story about her and Marcus. It was becoming a movement, a message, that worth isn't measured in money, that love isn't limited by class, that healing sometimes comes with a wrench in hand and jazz in the background. One morning, Marcus called her and said simply, "Can you come over?" When she arrived, he was sitting on his front porch holding a small wooden box. Inside was a necklace, simple, handcrafted, with a small gear-shaped pendant at the center. "This belonged to my mother," he said. "She wore it every day until the cancer took her. She always said, if someone helps your heart turn like a gear, never let them go." Jade swallowed hard. "Marcus, I don't have diamonds," he said, "but I have this, and I have me. If that's ever enough for you, take it." Jade didn't speak. She didn't need to. She reached out, took the necklace, and clasped it around her neck, her fingers trembling. Then she looked into his eyes and said with a smile, "You know, the day I said I'd marry you if you fixed that engine, I was joking." Marcus smiled back. "I know." She stepped closer, whispering, "But now, I'm not." The engagement that changed everything. The morning air was crisp and golden as sunlight bathed the Atlanta skyline, but in the heart of Jade Monroe, something felt even brighter. She wore the gear-shaped necklace Marcus had given her like it was more valuable than a diamond crown. She hadn't taken it off since the night he gave it to her. Not for meetings, not for speeches, not even for the cover shoot of a prestigious tech magazine that begged her to remove it. "No," she had said simply, "it stays." That pendant, once her lover's late mother's keepsake, now rested against her heart, reminding her every moment who she was becoming. Not just the CEO of Greenreach, but a woman learning to love again, on her own terms. But something else stirred beneath the peace. Questions, decisions, responsibilities. Her company was growing faster than ever, and while public support surged after her viral statement, a different kind of tension was brewing quietly beneath the surface. Some investors were still skeptical. A few corporate sponsors were wispy, ring concerns behind closed doors, and her own legal team began advising her to sign personal reputation protection clauses in future contracts. Because, her lawyer had said, you never know how the public may shift. Jade fired her on the spot. Meanwhile, in the quiet part of town, Marcus continued fixing cars, still refusing media offers, still rejecting interviews. He had received over 50 partnership proposals from mechanics across the country, along with endorsement deals and sponsorships, but he turned them all down. "I'm not here to be famous," he told Jade one evening. "I'm here to do what I love and love who I do it for." That night, she stayed with him at his home for the first time. His house was small, warm, and filled with the scent of wood polish and fried catfish. They cooked together, laughed like old friends, and when the night settled in, they sat outside on the porch swing watching the stars above. "Marcus," Jade whispered, "do you think we can make it work? You and me? This life?" He looked over at her, eyes deep and steady. "We already are." She leaned her head on his shoulder, the gear pendant pressing gently against her skin. "Then I want to give you something too." She reached into her jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a simple silver ring, no diamonds, no flash, just a smooth circle with a tiny engraved heartbeat line across it. Marcus's eyes widened slightly. You're proposing to me?" She smiled softly. "I started the joke, remember? It's only fair I finish it." For a long second, Marcus said nothing. Then, standing up, he pulled her into his arms, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "Yes, I'll marry you, Jade Monroe, gear pendant and all." The engagement sent shockwaves across the media. From oil to opulence, mechanic to merry billionaire CEO. America's most powerful woman chooses love over luxury. Jade Monroe's engagement ring has no diamond. Why, that's powerful. But it also did something more. It changed the way people viewed power. All across the country, young women began speaking up about choosing love over image. Men in working-class jobs began sharing how they felt seen, valued, and heard for the first time in years. One viral tweet said, "Jade Monroe didn't just choose a man, she chose the message that love isn't bought, it's built." Soon after, Marcus and Jade were invited to speak at universities on talk shows. Even at the United Nations Women in Leadership Summit, Jade accepted one invitation to speak at a small local community college just 5 miles from Marcus's shop. She stepped onto the stage that day, not in a power suit, but in jeans and a green Reach t-shirt. Her speech wasn't rehearsed. She stood before a room full of young people and said, "People told me I had to choose love or leadership. They said a powerful woman can't marry a man with calloused hands. They said image is everything, but I've learned something different. I've learned that power is not about dominance, it's about dignity, that love doesn't weaken leadership, it deepens it, that a person who keeps engines running can also keep your soul alive. So I chose both, and I'm proud of that." The audience stood on their feet in tears and applause, but not everyone was clapping. In the shadows of corporate offices, silent enemies were watching. A competitor company, Solar Nova, began quietly working with media consultants, planning to use Jade's relationship as a talking point to question her focus and judgment. Rumors began circulating that Greenreach's next big contract might be handed off to another firm due to brand instability. Jade was furious, not for herself, but for what this meant to the women who looked up to her. She stormed into her own boardroom, slammed the article on the table, and declared, "Let me be clear. I will not shrink to fit your boxes. I will not apologize for who I love or how I lead." When silence followed, she added sharply, "If anyone in this room believes love makes a woman weak, you're welcome to leave right now." No one moved, but Jade knew the pressure was building. The wedding was 3 months away, but already the guest list was impossible to manage. Politicians, celebrities, tech moguls all wanted to attend, some to support, some just to be seen. Jade wanted something else, something real. "I want to get married where it all started," she told Marcus one evening. "In the shop, among the tools, the oil stains, and the jazz music." He blinked, then laughed. "In my garage?" She smiled. "Yes, in the same place where I lost a car and found everything else." And so it was decided. The shop was cleaned, strung with white lights, old tires turned into planters, workbenches polished, and folding chairs arranged beneath an open awning. Instead of tuxedos, guests wore jeans. Instead of a red carpet, there was an oil-stained rug. Instead of a luxury venue, there was Joe's Repairs, still bearing the same old sign. Marcus wore a simple gray shirt and suspenders. Jade wore a flowing white jumpsuit and her gear pendant. The same jazz song from the radio played softly in the background. When she walked down the makeshift aisle between parked cars, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. And when they exchanged vows, they didn't promise riches or castles or fairy tales. They promised real things: respect, honesty, forgiveness, and laughter. "I vow to never forget what brought us here," Marcus said. "A broken engine and an open heart." "I vow to never let the world define what we already know," Jade replied. "That love is not about where you come from. It's about where you're willing to go, together." The internet exploded again, but this time with celebration. The wedding of the year took place in a garage, and it was beautiful. Jade Monroe writes a new kind of fairy tale. Who needs a castle when you have character? As they danced their first dance on the garage floor, surrounded by fairy lights and cheering friends, Marcus whispered in her ear, "You remember the day you joked about marrying me if I fixed your engine?" Jade nodded. "Of course." He smiled. "You should have asked me to fix your heart instead." She smiled back. "You already did." Her vows broke the internet, but what happened next tested everything. For days after the garage wedding, the world buzzed with admiration and surprise. Photos of Jade Monroe dancing in a mechanic shop in her white jumpsuit went viral, her gear pendant glinting beneath the lights, her hands held tightly in Marcus's as the couple swayed to old jazz. One photo in particular broke the internet, a candid moment where she leaned in, forehead against his, eyes closed, peaceful, free. It was shared millions of times with the caption, "This is what love looks like when no one's performing." But just as the world fell in love with their story, reality came knocking again, harder this time. 2 weeks after the wedding, Jade was in a conference meeting with global partners from South Korea and Germany when her chief strategy officer, Amanda Reed, rushed in with a pale face and shaking hands. "There's been an attack," she whispered, sliding her phone toward Jade. It was a video, blurry but real, showing flames, smoke, and chaos outside a Greenreach supply hub in Nigeria. Dozens of trucks had been set on fire, workers fleeing, screaming, sirens in the background. A masked man stood in front of the camera shouting threats against American companies that pretend to care about the poor while making billions. Jade's heart sank. "How many injured?" "3, so far," Amanda said softly. "1 in critical condition." Jade stood up, her voice cold and clear. "Schedule a flight. I'm going there." The room gasped. "Ma'am, that's not safe." "I'm not. But asking," she said, already grabbing her coat. "I started this company to serve people. If they're bleeding on my watch, I'm not hiding behind a Zoom screen." Marcus was waiting outside her building when she exited, having heard the news from the radio. His face was tense, his jaw tight. "You're really going?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "I have to." He paused, then nodded slowly. "Then I'm going too." "Marcus, it's dangerous." "I don't care," he said. You were alone for too long. You don't have to be anymore." And that was that. They boarded the plane together, hands clasped tightly as the jet lifted into the sky. Landing in Lagos was like stepping into a storm. The heat pressed down like a weight, and the air buzzed with tension and smoke. Jade and Marcus were met by local security and guided through wreckage and ash to the damaged facility. It was worse than the videos had shown. Burned trucks, shattered windows, the scent of rubber and gasoline thick in the air. Jade stood silently, heart aching as a young Nigerian worker approached with tears in his eyes. "I tried to stop them," he said, his shirt singed. "They said Greenreach steals from the poor, but I work here and they feed my family." Jade hugged him without a word. That night she sat with every injured worker and their families, listening, not talking, not explaining, just listening. Marcus stood quietly in the background, watching his wife lead not with pride but with presence. Later that evening he sat beside her outside the field hospital as she cried for the first time in years. "I built this to help people," she whispered. "Why does it feel like I'm failing?" Marcus placed his hand gently over hers. "Because your heart is real. That's what makes this pain honest. But pain doesn't mean failure. It means you're still fighting." After days of boots-on-the-ground work, Jade ordered full reparations for every family affected. She personally paid for the surgeries of the critically injured and promised hazard pay to all workers in high-risk zones. She didn't make press statements. She didn't invite cameras. But one young journalist from a local station followed quietly and filmed a short video of her fixing a broken water pipe outside the factory with her own hands, sleeves rolled up, sweat pouring. The caption read, "She could have sent a lawyer, she sent herself." Back in the US, that video changed everything again. People saw her not as the billionaire CEO on magazine covers, but as a woman standing ankle-deep in muddy water, fixing what was broken with her own 2 hands. Wall Street critics fell silent. Solar Nova, which had tried to use her relationship as a weakness, lost a major international contract, and thousands of women in leadership around the world began sharing the video with the hashtag #LeadLikeJade. But behind the praise, a new storm was brewing. An anonymous whistleblower from within Greenreach leaked confidential emails to a tabloid, claiming Jade had misused company funds to support Marcus's garage and give him illegal business advantage. The story exploded. Love scandal in green tech empire? Did Jade Monroe cross the line for her mechanic husband? The emails were fake, fabricated lines pieced together from old records, but it didn't matter. The damage had started. Jade was summoned by the Federal Business Ethics Committee for an investigation. Headlines labeled her reckless, naive, emotionally compromised. Her board was divided. Sponsors pulled advertising. Stocks wobbled. Marcus, seeing the storm rise again, confronted her one evening. "Maybe I should step away," he said, eyes filled with conflict, "just for a while, until this dies down." Jade snapped, "No, you're not my liability. You're my life, Marcus." "But they're tearing you apart." They did that before you ever came. The only thing holding me together is you." They sat in silence. Then Jade stood. Hands trembling. "I built this company from nothing, with my name, my blood, my soul. And if I lose it all defending what's right, then so be it. I'm not building an empire that demands I hide the love of my life just to keep its roof intact." The next morning, she walked into the ethics committee hearing in a plain navy dress, no jewelry, no makeup, no PR agent. When they asked about the emails, she replied calmly, "Love is not a crime, integrity is not optional, and truth doesn't hide behind lawyers. It stands here and faces the storm." The room fell silent. An hour later, the emails were confirmed to be forged by a former disgruntled executive. The case was closed immediately, but what remained was Jade's legacy, unshaken, undefeated, and now unforgettable. As she walked out of the courthouse hand in hand with Marcus, reporters flooded the steps, flashes firing, questions shouting. One reporter called out, "Miss Monroe, do you regret anything?" Jade stopped, turned to face the crowd and said, "I regret waiting so long to live my truth. The legacy of a love that changed a nation." It had been nearly 1 year since Jade Monroe stood at the courthouse steps and said she regretted only one thing: waiting too long to live her truth. That moment, captured on every camera, echoed far beyond headlines. It echoed into boardrooms, break rooms, classrooms, and dinner tables. It wasn't just about a CEO or a mechanic or a scandal. It was about the power of living without masks, and the kind of love that rebuilds people, not just reputations. Inside the Greenreach headquarters, a quiet revolution was underway. After the false allegations and ethics committee hearing, Jade had returned to her company with one clear mission: not just to rebuild Greenreach's name, but to rebuild its purpose. She overhauled the leadership structure, creating the Ground First Council, a panel made entirely of entry-level employees from around the world who would advise top executives every month. She made it mandatory for all C-level leaders to spend 1 week a year working alongside line workers, installing solar panels, repairing water systems, cleaning batteries. "No more suits-only leadership," Jade declared at a global summit. "If you can't lift what your workers carry, you don't deserve to lead them." It shocked the business world, but it inspired the working class. Other corporations scrambled to follow her lead, not because they had to, because the public now expected it. Meanwhile, Marcus quietly expanded Joe's repairs into something extraordinary. With Jade's blessing and zero interference, he built a nonprofit program called Fixers of the Future. The program trained underprivileged youth, especially young black boys and girls, in engine repair, electrical systems, solar maintenance, and mechanical design. "Everyone wants to teach code these days," Marcus told a reporter once, "but we still need people who know how to fix what breaks. And fixing teaches more than skill. It teaches patience, discipline, and pride." His first graduating class included 42 students, many of whom had never touched a wrench before joining the program. Now, they were opening their own repair shops, getting hired by tech companies, and even teaching their communities how to build solar panels. One graduate said, "Mr. Marcus didn't just teach us machines, he taught us we matter." As both Jade and Marcus rose in visibility, they kept one promise to each other: privacy at home. They bought no mansion, chose no limelight, and stayed in their modest home near the shop. Every Sunday, Jade made cornbread while Marcus grilled fish. They took walks at dusk and read books on the porch. Sometimes people would stop by just to say thank you for the jobs, the courage, the inspiration. Once a woman broke down crying and hugged Jade in a grocery store, whispering, "I left a marriage that was killing me inside because you reminded me I deserve real love." Jade hugged her back, whispered gently, "I'm proud of you." But with growth came new choices. One morning, Jade received a call from the U.S. President's team, an offer to join the National Economic Recovery Task Force and possibly chair a committee on sustainable infrastructure. It was an honor. It was influence. It was everything she had once dreamed of, but accepting meant moving to Washington. Long days in government halls and stepping back from Greenreach, Marcus, and their new quiet life. That night, she sat with Marcus on the back porch, the sky scattered with stars, her thoughts tangled in silence. "You thinking of taking it?" he asked softly, not pressuring, not guiding, just asking. I don't know, she said honestly. It's big, but I'm afraid I'll lose what we've built. Marcus smiled gently. You're not just building this company anymore, Jade. You're building the future. And if that road takes you to Washington, I'll still be right here, cheering you on. She looked at him, heart full. How did I ever live without you? He chuckled. Probably with fancier dinners and cleaner clothes. She laughed through a tear, leaning into him. But not with this piece. Jade accepted the offer, but only under two conditions: that her time be split 50-50 between national duties and Green Reach, that Fixers of the Future receive federal funding and representation in her task force. The president agreed, the media praised her again, but Jade didn't care about applause anymore. She cared about impact. 1 year after their wedding, they hosted an anniversary event, not a party, but a community celebration. They called it Grease Grace, a day for builders. It was held right at the shop, just like their wedding. Kids from Fixers of the Future showed off their restored engines. Jade gave a short talk about how kindness isn't weakness, and Marcus held a workshop on how to fix a broken bike chain. People from all walks of life came: engineers, janitors, activists, mechanics, CEOs, nurses, mothers, fathers, teenagers, veterans. And the message was clear. Love does not lower you, it raises you. Kindness does not threaten power, it gives it purpose. And legacy isn't made by what you build, it's made by who you build it with. That night, as the last guests left and the shop fell quiet, Marcus pulled Jade close beneath the fairy lights, the soft jazz playing from an old speaker. Remember the first time we danced right here? He whispered. She smiled. How could I forget? I didn't know then, he said, but I do now. That moment was the beginning of everything good. Jade placed her forehead against his, whispering, You didn't just fix my engine, Marcus. You fixed the parts of me I didn't even know were broken. And as they swayed in each other's arms, no cameras, no crowd, just heartbeats and headlights in the distance, they proved that sometimes the most powerful thing you can ever do is love someone enough to be fully yourself. Final line of the series. And somewhere in a quiet garage, under soft jazz and warm light, the story of a CEO and a mechanic became the blueprint for a better world. One heart, one wrench, one truth at a time.